Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is David Novak. I am haunted by Mahmoud Darwish's idea that without history you cannot have truth. I'm not sure where it was in this, if it was in the text itself or in his quoted editorial or in the introduction written by Ibrahim Muhawi that it was referred to. I can't seem to find it, but I did make mention of it in my last recent reads video. I have just finished reading 10 Years of Secret Diplomacy by E.D. Morel. And so that thought is in my mind, and I am thinking of all of the unfinished bits of history. My cat likes to chase these things, and he's really in a mood for it today. The book is so very clearly written. And I think I have a better understanding of the whole Morocco situation, which I didn't know about going into this book. The four powers, Spain, England, France, and Germany, signed an agreement that Morocco would remain a free and independent state. However, secretly, France had designs upon the territory and ultimately made Morocco into a protectorate. England backed up those secret designs, as I believe did Spain. So the book details the whole story, which brought Europe close to war. I won't say on the brink of war, but the tensions were such. Germany had sent a gunboat out to off the coast of Morocco, and things were pretty tense. And ultimately, everybody went back to the conference table, and France made some concessions to Germany elsewhere in the Congo, and the little bits of land were traded for each other, and everything was at least temporarily resolved. E.D. Morel felt not permanently, and he much abhorred the whole secret nature of those transactions. Now, given the long hindsight that we have on the matter of the colonization of Africa, I think our viewpoint is different. Morel, I believe, had no qualms with the notion of European powers going over to Africa and doing business. He felt that business should be fairly done, though what he considered fairly done might not be the same thing that we might consider today. I think now, though, we are much more inclined to think that none of them should have gone over there. And in general, that would be my take as well. But we have a lot of people yet today that are very business-minded, and people who believe that business trumps all else would be much in line with the thinking of Morel and his peers, and even with the worst of his peers. So Morel goes into details about all of the prevarications, and England and the British press were colluders in fomenting this anti-German sentiment based on misrepresentations, largely, of the sort that we see today. Even I'm not adept on current events. I try to avoid the papers. Some things like the present situation in Gaza is, excuse me, unavoidable. You read about it everywhere, even without trying to. But other things, such as the Russian invasion of Ukraine, not so much. And I know that certain friends of mine on Facebook are very adamant that very much the United States is at fault. Everybody prefaces their condemnations of U.S. policy with Putin should not have gone in and done that. However, U.S. policy made such a movement on the part of Putin and the Russian military almost inevitable. Gotta keep forgetting to do that. I don't know how much these situations are similar. And so I can't speak on Putin or Russia, but with the German, France, and Britain scenario, I speak as a person who has no education, but vaguely in the recesses of my mind, I attribute all the blame for the Great War to Germany. And in reading Morel's text, I realized that at least up to the point of the resolution of the Morocco debacle, the greater portion of the blame actually rested with France and with England. Germany was almost pushed into becoming much more bellicose. And I have only just begun the book Truth and the War, which covers the start of the Great War. So I don't know what further developments ensued after the Morocco debacle. But the idea that even the basic truths behind these great events may not be readily available, or where it's available may not yet be readily known. For even in his day, while certain documents were available and then certain documents came available later, they were not known to the general public of either France or Britain. And then when they did become available, there was still much obfuscation, which kept the public mind away from them. And there are contemporary parallels in our own time that I'm so aware of. And so So I'm thinking about this idea of truth being dependent upon history and needing to know the historical facts. And in his discussion about Morocco, the writing is crystal clear, but some of the geography, some of the day-to-day political machinations were not so easy for me to comprehend. And so I feel that when it comes to assessing, say, the origins of the First World War, not every one of us can become expert authorities on the subject. And so, as a fallback, what we must next do is rely on the testimony of persons of integrity, such as Morel. And I've started his book, and it's available online in a couple of places, and so that's how I'm reading it, not in this edition. But there's a dedication. He dedicates it to my sons, in the hope that they may help to free humanity from the curse of militarism and war. I don't know if you can see that. So, regardless of his being a man of his time, and certainly entrapped even in the general mores and viewpoints of his time, he is a moral voice worth heeding, and so I take him at his word. And so initially I had planned to start a different book and then take this up after I had finished that, a book on natural science. But because I am in the mode of reading his prose, I decided to go straight into this. And oddly enough, the one thought that came into my mind at the close of it was an event which happened, an event which has a Chicago connection. I'm not sure where it happened, but you may recall there is an actor named Jussie Smollett, and at one point he was apparently attacked on the street, and he made a police report, and I remember seeing the very initial reporting of that, and something was off. And then, of course, very rapidly, it devolved into accusations of his having made up the affair. And similar to certain things in this book, although we may not know the reason, the sense that Smollett was being railroaded was inescapable. Now, regardless of that, regardless of the presumption of innocence, almost immediately the public at large was fired up to assume his guilt. And I believe just earlier this year or just late last year, the initial charges against him having been dropped, another set of charges were brought against Smollett, and he was found guilty, though he continues to profess his innocence. At the time, I wrote a poem about it, which I put at my blog, as it were, and I will put a link to that in the comments just so you can see. It is not my place to make pronouncements about matters that I have no knowledge of. And it's not something that I have followed. And at the time, I did not think to make copies of the initial, the very earliest news reports that sent up a red flag to me. I wish I had, because they may well have come down by now. And this is the kind of information which tends to go down the memory hole and then becomes lost to the sight of posterity. So years hence, people will some cat action in the further room. People will come to what's available and come to the, say, guilty verdict and not know any of the matter which led up to it. Of course, having had one of my own experiences with the legal system, and then having recently been aware of the case against Wayne Xiang, the animal rights activist, I'm very well aware that when cases go to trial, oftentimes huge amounts of material is not permitted as evidence, which can impact any subsequent verdict. And so I don't know anything about any of this. And the poem which I wrote stands, however, as a testament to my reaction at that time. And it represents a poet's truth. And this is not to say that poets can't get these things wrong. Excuse me. Hey, come on, guys. Come on, kids. That's enough. Cece. Come on. And so you have the sense that even from times immemorial, we have this historical record which is filled with gaps, filled with distortions, filled with lies, and there are errors compounded upon errors and distortions that are left untouched in order to form a basis for future distortions. And so it can be very hard to establish what the truth is. And that's a reason why I think that the establishment of the historical record is so important for humanity. The animals in their world don't have to worry about time past or time future in the same way. But for us, it's important. I'd like to read just a little passage from Moses Finley, which is actually a very famous one, at least in the ancient history field. And I think it was originally written into it was a review of something in, I don't know, New York Review of Books or London Review, one of those publications. And it's reprinted in Aspects of Antiquity, and it comes from the essay Christian Beginnings, 3 Views of Historiography. Far be it from me to suggest, no matter how faintly, that it is ever unimportant to get the historical record right. But the feeling will not go away that there is an Alice in Wonderland quality about it all. There is something unhappily naive about the implication that anti-Semitism might quietly disappear if one could only demonstrate decisively that no Jews, or just a few quislings among them, shared in the responsibility for the crucifixion. When it comes right down to it, welcome as the Vatican Council's declaration must be, its practical significance is problematical. Collective Jewish wickedness permeates the whole of Western culture. Are we to undertake a great campaign of elimination, beginning, say, with Bach's Passion according to St. John, the words and music together? The dead past never buries its dead. The world will have to be changed, not the past. I've quoted that last sentence at least twice in different things that I've written, but it is actually the very first sentence of that paragraph that I keep returning to in my mind as I am reading Morel. Far be it from me to suggest, no matter how faintly, that it is ever unimportant to get the historical record right. I agree with Mahmoud Darwish that it is of the utmost importance to get the historical record right, but not merely in the minds of professional historians. I believe that the public at large needs to understand and digest these things as much as anybody. And so I really encourage anybody who is interested in the lead up to the Great War, World War I, to take a look at his arguments and try to understand what the case was that he puts very specifically against Britain, France, and much less so Spain, who I believe he considers Spain somewhat under the thumb of England at that time. When you study history, you don't get sure answers about anything. But very often, the sure answers that you get from second-rate historians or, say, politicians are much less than adequate. So I just want to affirm that this was very worthwhile to getting a handle on that time period for me. And now I will head into Truth and the War and try to come up with some understanding of what the truth was, at least in the viewpoint of E.D. Morel. I will leave that there. Thank you for stopping by my channel.